Welcome to Stab the Dragon, episode number 73 for whiskey review number 44. Tonight, September 26, 2022, we turn the corner from reviewing just North Texas whiskeys, well, with a few exceptions, and we head south from Fort Worth to Waco, Texas, and Balcones Distilling, about an hour and a half from my house. I've got several Balcones whiskeys, so this will take a few weeks. We start off this series with the Balcones Pot Still Texas Bourbon. Straight bourbon. Just the facts. Balcones began distilling in 2009 in what had been a welding shop underneath a highway, and they had some pot stills from Portugal. This Texas whiskey is aged for over 2 years in the extreme Texas climate. Distilled in that pot still for special flavors that pot stills produce, this whiskey comes in at 46% ABV or 92 proof. Now in 2015, Balcones moved to a brand new distillery with an estimated capacity of, well, depending on who you read, 350,000 or 800,000 liters per year. That's a big difference, but that's what I've read. This bottle of bourbon is labeled batch number TPSB 20-1, and the date on this bottle is 1/27 of 2020. I think I opened this bottle in early 2021. This is my second bottle of the Balcones bourbon. I paid just under $30, but I don't remember which store I bought it in. This whiskey has won a few awards, including a score of 93 at the 2019 Ultimate Spirits Challenge. My score for this whiskey is 91. My letter grade, A+. Recommendation: this is a required tasting to get to know Texas whiskeys. But if you prefer smooth, mild whiskeys, this may not be for you. It's a punch in the mouth of flavor, and it's quite spicy and it's got a decent burn to it. Now for the details. History. Again, founded in 2008, and they were distilling by 2009 in Waco, Texas. It's now a Texas icon, really, named for a geologic fault that runs through Texas underneath I-35. Their chief competitor in Texas is Garrison Brothers, I believe. And, you know, who claims the rights to the first whiskey distilled in Texas? Well, Garrison Brothers claims they put out the first whiskey, but Balcones says theirs was the first Texas whiskey. So that implies Garrison Brothers may have sourced some of theirs, is what it sounds like to me. Whereas Balcones made a grain-to-glass Texas whiskey. Baby Blue corn whiskey, was their first whiskey that they were selling. Now, they've won so many awards as a distillery. Distillery of the Year, Distiller of the Year. I'm not even going to go through the long list here. Of course, in their history, the obligatory legal mess, right? The original founder-creator was kind of fired by the board. He gave him a little bit too much power. I've read some details about that, and it just seems like, you know, he was real creative and he wanted to go in a different direction than the board did. That board was all about money, and so it got messy, lawsuits, and the creator of Balcones had to leave. There you go. I think he got a raw deal myself. But this bourbon was first released in early 2019. So for history of the Balcones Pot Still Bourbon, 5 points. Marketing, bottle, and packaging. I've seen lots of Balcones reviews on YouTube and websites, so it's popular. It's a now famous whiskey, so it gets lots of press. I don't remember seeing any actual commercials or advertisements for it, just lots of reviews. The bottles are a very basic kind of bottle. I don't even know what you would call this, but you know, you see this kind of bottle all over the place. It's just a real plain Jane. Their labels are all kind of similar. They're bold, they're informative, they're attractive labels. They still leave room to see the whiskey, which is important. So I like it. Notice the corn there, the corn on that label. I like that. So it's not super classy. It's not overdone. It's pretty plain in some ways, bold in some ways. They let their whiskey do the talking. I like how that corn and the Texas heat kind of shine through on that label. I think is what I think. It says the original Texas whiskey. Again, taking a jab at Garrison Brothers. The bottle does have some kind of a little round plastic thing affixed to it here. You can see that. And it says Balcones Distillery, and it's got their logo on it, which I don't really get what their logo is. It's on their website as well, so I don't really understand that. But all in all, for bottle, marketing, packaging, 4 points out of 5. Composition. The Whiskey Jug website says that this has blue corn, wheat, rye, and barley. The Balcones website mentions they use New Mexico blue corn, but Texas Whiskey, this book by Nico Martini, he says they use Texas blue corn. So there again, I'm getting conflicting information there. This is aged over 2 years. That's on the bottle. So it's a straight bourbon, and that's listed there on the bottle as well. Straight bourbon whiskey. At their new distillery, their pot stills come from Scotland, according to the Whiskey Wash website and also Martini's book. No definitive mash bill can be found other than blue corn, wheat, rye, and barley. But knowing, all that still is in their favor. So I'm going to say 13 out of 15 points for composition. Appearance. This is a fairly dark whiskey, right? I mean, you can look at that, and that's pretty dark. And it's got a red tint to it as well. That's that purple corn. Just like when I was reviewing the Iron Root whiskeys. There's that heavy red tint. You can see it in the glass here as well. So the appearance is very lovely. It's not the darkest, but it's pretty dark. 4 out of 5 points. Nose. My next to useless nose, which usually cannot smell bourbons, can definitely smell this one. I smell the corn sweetness, a little bit of the Texas funk. I usually give a whiskey a 7 as a generic score if I can't smell anything. Usually scotches or ryes I can smell a little bit stronger, but this is a bourbon that I can smell something, so I'm gonna give this an 8. An 8. Taste, the all-important taste. Now, when I first tried this whiskey, about 3 years ago or so, and this is my second bottle, I really didn't much care for it. Really. It was so funky. It was a cinnamon bomb. I think this was my very first true Texas whiskey with the funk. I'd already had TX blended, but see, that's a blended whiskey and it doesn't have the funk. It's a real sweet, almost dessert whiskey. But this, I think, was my very first true Texas whiskey. And it blew me away. Not in a good way. I really didn't like it at first. I thought, what is this stuff that I'm drinking? But about halfway through the bottle, I kind of started liking it. I was like, I'm not sure. And then when I finished it, it still wasn't a favorite, but I thought, I'm going to give it another chance. So I did. And here we are. The website says honey, sweet cream, candied pecans, sandalwood, and leather. I don't have a faintest idea what sandalwood is. Really don't. But I see that all the time. I say that it's sweet, but definitely not honey. More like caramel maybe, or even molasses. I definitely get the pecan flavor. There's leather in there for me. Cinnamon for sure. But the wood char mixing with the corn gives it that Texas funk that I've really come to love. So this is not like anything coming out of Kentucky. This kind of bourbon does not resemble Kentucky bourbons at all. I would love to do a taste test blind with this bourbon and maybe one of my favorite Kentucky bourbons to see which I really like better. They're so different. I like both, okay, but they're just very different. So this taste, I've really, like I said, the first bottle, I had my questions about it. Really wasn't sure. But now, 23 out of 25 points for taste. Mouthfeel and finish. So it's a nice creamy mouthfeel, not thin in the least, and it's only 92 proof. It's quite spicy, definitely. Leaves the mouth nice and tingly. It's got a very pleasant, strong burn to it, but not an ethanol burn. This definitely kicks above its weight class. The burn hits you in the mouth on the back end of the drink, and then goes up in the sinuses a little bit, goes to the throat. But I'm not getting the Kentucky or Texas hug down the chest, okay? But you're left with no doubt whatsoever that you're drinking a Texas whiskey. For those who like smooth whiskeys, no, this one's going to slap you around some. Seriously, I've had some 100 proof whiskeys that were more mild and gentle than this one. And that's another reason to love this whiskey. I love a good burn, okay? Grew up eating hot peppers from a small toddler up, and this is hot. It drinks hot. On the finish, I'm getting the spices, cinnamon, and I'm getting, for the first time, hints of cocoa. That's the first time I've ever gotten some kind of a chocolate in whiskey, but I see that in reviews all the time. I'm going to say mouthfeel finish is a 15 out of 15. For price, value, and availability, Total Wine has this for $28.99. Specs, $27.99. Goody Goody, $29.99. And again, I don't really remember where I bought this. I'm kind of thinking Specs, but I'm not sure. For a craft bourbon aged for over 2 years in Texas, with all this mouthful of flavor and a throat punch besides, this price is crazy good. Under $30? Really? Yes. It's available at all 3 of the major stores I go to, and I've seen it in a lot of smaller family-owned stores as well. So for price, value, and availability, 10 out of 10 points. Now, neat or mixer? For some of you who want to try a Texas bourbon, but maybe you're a little afraid of that funk and that burn, try this on ice. Go ahead and put it on the rocks and see what you think. I think this would do magnificently in a cocktail as well. If you like your whiskeys to be pretty stout, this is outstanding neat, and that's my preferred method right there. But I would love to have an old-fashioned with this. I'm going to have to do that at some point. So neat or mixer, 5 points. Bonus. Because this whiskey moved me into the Texas funk, which I now love. And I seriously did not like this when I first tried it. The first half of the bottle was like, ooh, now I'm going to have to finish it. So I wasn't sure that I would buy a second bottle. By the time I finished it, I thought, yeah, I'm going to have to try a second bottle just to figure this thing out. I've now figured it out. And guess what? It's a favorite. So 5 bonus points for this Texas bourbon. So my total score, 92. I started this review off at a 91, and then when we got down to the nosing, I bumped it up 1 point than what I did last night. So that's why there's a difference in how I started and how I finished. But letter grade, A+, definitely. Maybe my favorite bourbon. I don't know. Recommendation. If you are looking for that big, bold Texas flavor, this bourbon's it. The Balcones 92 proof pot still bourbon punches above its weight for sure. It's got that heavy char and the sweet corn along with that blue corn color that comes out red. This is just a mouthful of flavor that can never be mistaken for a Kentucky bourbon. If you're a bit proof shy and like smooth whiskeys, this probably is not going to be for you. You might go ahead and try it in a cocktail, see what you think, or on ice. If you're trying to drink your way around Texas, you cannot miss Balcones Pot Still Bourbon. Absolutely. My conclusion then, this will be a favorite. When this bottle's done, I'm going to have to get another bottle. I can always see replacing. In the coming Texas whiskey tournament that I hope to do in 2023, this whiskey will be a tough competitor in the bourbon category. I can see it competing well with the TX Bourbon 90 proof or the Iron Root bourbons. That's going to be a challenge to figure out which of these is my favorite. Well, that's all for Stab the Dragon tonight. Out here.